Remember when we used to talk about the paperless office?
E-commerce?
Signing a contract on paper.
And even giving out an agent's pager number?
We're in a mobile world.
We're in a mobile world, and your business needs to be too.
It's a digital world.
Workflow is changing, and so too are our experiences.
There are over 350 PropTech players right now
Competing for the space.
How do you keep up with it all? And what's next?
Welcome to Founders.
A new podcast with Josh Phegan
On the future of workflow in real estate.
Welcome to Founders, and today we have a great conversation with Geoff Lewis from BOWERBIRD. Geoff, give us a bit of an understanding. What is BOWERBIRD? What do you do? How does it work?
Well, thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. So BOWERBIRD is essentially a property staging and interior design business. We're focused on furniture. We're focused on the built environment and shaping the built environment through furniture and technology.
Yeah, this is kind of amazing, right? Because I had the chance a couple of Saturdays ago to pop out and come and see the facility. And mate, I was blown away. The number of forklifts that you've got, the size of the furniture that's actually available and on offer, the number of trucks that you've got. Like, you're a real trucker. And it's actually a great conversation because it gives you a bit of an understanding of the scale and the size around what it is that you do. Now, we're going to talk through the basics because I think that we've got to really help an agent who's never done this before, and yet we've also got to help someone who does a lot of this all the time. And I go to, have a look at some of the best agents that I get to work with, and I just ask them a very simple question, what percentage of the properties that you take to market these days are styled? And, you hear people say like 100%. And this is that whole idea is that, people buy the perception rather than just the house itself. I know that sounds funny, but when I first came to Sydney and I was leasing an apartment, I leased a particular apartment because it had a balcony, and I thought this is going to be amazing. In the 5 years that I was there, I never used the balcony. And so this is that whole idea is that, what styling is it's about selling a lifestyle. It's about creating an environment that someone feels like they've arrived home. And this is a really powerful way to be able to get a buyer to pay more for a particular property, or to maybe get a commercial tenant to make a decision to go and lease a particular property. So we're going to talk a bit about it because it seems like it's quite a fragmented market. You've got a lot of people that are just starting up in this space, and they've been to IKEA and they've bought a few furniture items, and then you've got some other people that are like, well, hang on a sec, no, this is actually a really important space to get right. So let's talk a bit about why styling. So Geoff, you're going to go and sell your house.
Yep.
Is the way that your house presented today, and this is hard because you're married to a stylist, but it was the way that your house presented to today, the way on average that it should be presented to the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. No, what our business is about is essentially creating that emotional connection to a space. So the value that we bring to an agent and to a vendor in their campaign is selling their property faster for a higher price. That's what it's all focused on. And how do we do that? We do that by understanding the market, understanding the demographic, and understanding the best way to present this home to that potential purchaser. And it's really as simple as that, but it's not that simple because the reality is that most people that walk into a property cannot visualize a space. So a poorly furnished home or an empty home, people just don't get it. And that's what we bring. So we bring the physical, we promote the property in the best possible way, and we do that through clever furnishings.
And this is an interesting thing about like clever, and like I'm not a specialist, but my mum always said, something below hip height is better because it makes it feel bigger. I don't know if that's a rule, but that was something that mum always said when buying furniture.
Below hip height for you?
Yes. Thanks so much, mate. But that basic idea is to like really get you to understand that like this can make a huge difference in how our space is actually presented. And if you don't believe that, just think about when more established agents, when you say to them, hey, how do you feel when you get a call from a buyer who bought a property from you and then a year later says, hey, I need to sell it. And then you go out to the house and you look at it and it looks terrible compared to how you sold it. And what you realize is that literally they've got no idea about presentation. They've got no idea about how to actually style a property or how it should look. And this is even that basic idea that, if you're all of a sudden you've got someone coming who's a really influential person from work and they're going to come to your house and you spend all day cleaning the house and you remove things and you put things in cupboards and you hide stuff in the oven, it's because you want to be actually at your best in terms of presentation. And, sometimes agents will tell me that the problem with having your home like styled is that ultimately sometimes the vendor turns around and goes, I actually really like it here now. Then
that happens.
They actually want to stay inside of it. So let's talk a bit about it. So when does this actually happen? Well, I think that you're really good about understanding the psychology, that if you're there and you're at a market appraisal and you're wanting to turn that into a listing presentation or move that listing presentation into a signed agency agreement, a stylist can be a really powerful part of partnering with you as an agent to assist in getting that seller to come to market. Tell me a little bit about, how do stylists go to build that relationship and that level of rapport, and how can they then continue to help to sell the agent in to assist them in getting that listing?
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things that we really focus on at BOWERBIRD is that we don't want to be considered just like a transactional styling offering. We want to be considered a partner in your business, and we want to work with you. So the agents that work with us well and work with us a lot understand that we can be a real support with them in a listing presentation to help them win a listing. We come in, we're a non-threatening partner. We can communicate with the vendor. We can help them. We're the stylist helping them to get their property presented in the best possible way. So that's super valuable and super useful. We can be inserted after the listing's been won, and we come in then and we help to get the property looking its best. So, as I said, the clever agents and the agents that engage us in the most meaningful way treat us as a partner and use us across all different stages of the listing opportunity.
Yeah, this whole conversation is also about workflow, right? And what I love there is we can be coming in prior to winning the listing or we can come in after. My favorite is actually when an agent takes over a listing that someone else has not been able to sell. They call BOWERBIRD and say, guys, come out and have a look at it. You style it differently. They take it back to market and they sell it for $100,000 more than what it was on the market with another agent for 6 months. And this is that whole thing is that literally it really does matter how you got to present an asset in terms of how you look after it. And I always think about this with people. I say, hey, how did your car look the day you bought it from the dealership? It's beautiful, it's clean, everything's organized, it's amazing. How did your car look on the day you took it back into the dealership? That was the last hubcap was rolling off as you arrived into the dealership. And that's really what it's actually about, is about learning how to actually have someone who can come in and see things that you can't see. And I always think about it like literally you're almost like an internal visual architect, where you think about, I heard once that an architect can see things that you and I don't. That someone saw the Sydney Harbour Bridge and someone actually saw the Sydney Opera House before you and I did, and they actually then went and designed that and they built that. And that's what the art of what a great designer does, is that when they walk inside of a property and they think, hey, hang on a second, how do I furnish this space to give it light or to give it energy or to make it feel cozy or to make it feel spacious or, to do the things that are not obvious, and actually, what presence of artwork do we need to use? How do we go with plants? What are the sorts of things that we do in terms of the types of color tones that we're going to use and how we're going to furnish the space? Is it a kid's bedroom or do we put a double bed in there? Or is it a single bed with a study desk? What are the things that we do to make that right? And Geoff, I got to tell you, there are some people that absolutely get it, and there are other people that definitely don't get it. And I remember when I was selling properties, and when an owner moved out, and then we went to the settlement day, I was like, oh, the buyer's going to be so disappointed, because when you see that all that furniture's gone, it just doesn't look as good. And that's why it's a really important part to go to get that right.
Yeah.
Now, when someone's in a position and they're thinking about, okay, great, I need a stylist to come and do it, they build a personal relationship with their stylist. It's then also to the team that's behind the stylist to make sure that happens. Coming up and turning up on site, getting everything in the right way, making sure that ultimately you don't scratch a wall or don't inadvertently, the truck doesn't take out a letterbox. Tell us about how you're really driving that customer experience now, so that when it gets to on-site and the delivery, that we actually make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a good point, because it's not just about having a nice sofa. It's about everything that underpins the nice sofa turning up at the right time, in the right place. So, first of all, we've invested really heavily in our business, not just in furniture, but in the infrastructure and everything that underpins it. So, we have a large warehouse, 4,000 square metre warehouse. We have a fleet of trucks. We've got 10 vehicles. We've got delivery teams. We've got warehouse staff. And then obviously we've got incredible stylists that know what they're doing. But what underpins all that is also a technology layer that we've built. So to your point, every single item in our business is barcoded. It's scanned in, it's scanned out, it's all photographed in and out, and it's all QC'd on the way in and also on the way out. So
Quality control,
yeah. So goods need to pass a QC process in both directions before they arrive in the house. Doesn't mean we always get it right. So back to your point around, if we get it wrong, we own that and we fix it and we resolve it. So I think the important part is, you said earlier that there are a lot of independent stylists popping up, and that's great. But I would just suggest you need to be careful about who you're working with. You need to vet them. You need to make sure that there is like a layer of governance that sits underneath that business to ensure ultimately if you're the agent and you're referring them in, you're carrying that risk. So you want to be sure that that risk is mitigated through the business process that you're talking about.
And that's what I hear a lot of people go, hey, the first style was great, but then by the time I got to the third or fourth one, the furniture was starting to be a bit ratty. There was scratches on things. All of a sudden, the couch had a few marks on it. And this is actually where you've got to really make sure that you've got to maintain quality. And I think that that's what you really learn in the scale process is that literally it doesn't matter whether it's one job or the 300th job today. The most important part is that every single one of them is done with absolute excellence. Now, this is an important conversation, right? So an agent's in a position, they've got a property, they're in a position they've been moving that client to market. The stylist can go out before, or the stylist can go out after, and they're going to come back with a series of recommendations. When they do that series of recommendations, they're going to ask for what a budget should actually look like. And then when we have a look at a budget, they then work out what we're going to do, a partial style or a full style. What's the difference between a partial style and a full style?
Yeah, there's three different versions. There's what we would call a partial, which is part of an empty home. Then there is an integration, which is integrating partial furniture into somebody's existing furniture. And then there's a full style, which is essentially furnishing an entire empty property. So we do all of that, and we do all of it at scale, and it just depends on what's required in the property.
And so when you go to have a quick look at it, could it include everything from actual physical furniture to then what we're actually doing in terms of artwork, conversations around lighting, and even then other things like, for example, like some of the plants and other things that you might put inside of a property?
Anything that's loose. Anything,
Nice.
anything that's loose that we're working.
Not fixture is another way of saying that, Geoff. So this is actually a really important part because then you're thinking about the budgeting. What should agents be thinking, in terms of where budget should begin in some of this sort of stuff, and what's some of the most expensive jobs that you've seen people do?
Yeah, well, we try and start with a baseline of nothing under $4,000, and the reason we do that is because it's very difficult to add value below that. So it's not uncommon for us to be asked to do smaller projects or smaller integrations. What we've learned over 12 years of doing this is that when you take on that work at that lower end and you're only adding a little bit, you can't make an impact. And so we're not about doing projects for the sake of doing projects. We're about doing projects for the sake of getting a result for the client and for the agent. And so starting point $4,000, but we've got clients that have spent over $100,000 on furnishings, big estates for long periods, it adds up. So that's a very broad range, I know, but ultimately it comes down to the property, it comes down to what is required. And it should be less about, much like a marketing campaign, less about what it costs and more about the value that it brings to the property and the return on investment that you're going to get from that.
And the easiest way to do that is to sit with your stylist and to build out some packages for your office. So you have a bit of an idea of a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom, and then also to maybe something of big scale where you actually bring in for a customized quote, and that might be over a length of time. Let's say, for example, you're doing a developer display unit or you're doing something different where then there's a different commercial conversation of how that works. But I think it's really, really important to say, hey, we've got to get the packaging right. So if you're having a look at it, what we're now starting to say, okay, great, minimum of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 is then what people are going to be spending on getting that particular property positioned correctly, and the difference that it makes can actually be made up in one extra bid. So if the bids are going up in $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 increments, literally one extra bid will more than double what it is that you've actually spent on the styling, sometimes even 4 times that.
And that's what we always say. We say one bid on the auction floor pays for this many times over, and like we said at the top of the conversation, is creating an emotional connection with people, and then you get competitive tension. I mean, that's the whole auction process, right? But that competitive tension is driven off the emotional connection. Somebody wants the home, so at that point, the rational is removed, and they're just remembering the vision of them living there. And if you don't create the vision of them living there, you're less likely to get that outcome.
Founders is brought to you by Josh Phegan Digital. When we were setting out to go and create Josh Phegan Digital, we just had this whole idea that we wanted training to be on demand. And everything in our life is on demand. We just press play inside of the Netflix app. We press play on YouTube, play on Spotify. Why couldn't we just press play on training? And what we decided is we want to be super relevant to real estate agents so that in under a couple of minutes each day, if you wanted to, you could upskill and you could grow in new ways. And so we decided that we were going to release this thing that we called The Edit, which is basically the latest in property news stories that's happening every week right the way around the country. So you could be incredibly sharp in your conversations with sellers. And then we built out the short courses, which was all about rapidly building skills, whether or not it's about learning how to get better fees or to put on an assistant. And then we actually wanted to give you access to blueprints, so you didn't have to wait for it every year. You could just watch it whenever you wanted and actually go from zero to hero around everything that it takes, from goal setting, self and energy management, what you're doing around prospecting, listing, negotiation, and actually just have a system for the way that you work. Together with, getting really inspired by some of the best people in the industry with the black and white interviews. Josh Phegan Digital is available on iOS and also on Android. It's an incredible app, and it gives you everything that you'll need to be a much better agent. It's time to switch on. So let's talk about some of the logistical sides of things. How often does it take, or how long does it take from when an agent says, hey, I've got a potential job, before a stylist can be out on site? And then once a stylist is on site, how long does it usually take then before you've actually got furniture at the ready and inside of the property?
It's seasonal, but typically speaking, so for some context and for some scale, at any given time we've got 200 homes concurrently furnished. So there's a lot of furniture moving and there's a lot of logistics happening. So from a scale point of view, we've got the scale to be able to do things fast. In terms of you get in touch with us today, depending on what time of day it is, we could be there same day or next day to put a proposal together. You would have the proposal same day, or if it's late in the afternoon, next day. And then within a few days, we could be out there furnishing that property, providing we get sign off and everything.
And so the great thing is that then when people are turning up, what are some of the experiences that you can expect that literally might happen, for an agent to know that, A, we're coming on site today, we're now on site today, the site's now been completed, confirmation that you're happy with it, or if there's anything that might need an adjustment. What sort of happens through that process in building that consumer experience and relationship?
Yeah, we have a whole communication framework that underpins all of that. So we have an incredible offering to agents, which is BOWERBIRD Club. And part of the BOWERBIRD Club offering includes a whole communication framework so that the agent is kept in the loop of everything that's going on. So we're coordinating access with them and making sure they're across those access requirements. The moment the install is complete, there's automated messaging that goes out both via SMS and email to the agent so that they know that it's happened. We know they're busy. We don't want to interrupt them, but they also want to know that things are happening. So we've built a layer to ensure that we keep the right people in the loop throughout the whole process.
And this is the big thing, I think, that because I've seen a lot of things in the industry over time, and it was the first time that I've really seen full systemization of that customer experience at scale, and also to the conversation to say, hey, this is really making sure that we minimize any variations here, and that the delivery of the service, the experience, and the product of what it is that we actually put into a home can actually help to really establish that agent's brand, but also give them certainty that you are going to be as good as, if not better than them, around the consistency of the delivery of the service experience. And I'm like, that's pretty amazing when you start to think about it. In selling it in, what agents are now starting to do is to start to think about, hey, how are we doing packaging? So we've got our marketing packaging, then we've got our styling packaging, and that's then relating to what actually happens in terms of the vendor paid and the conversation around the funding. And there is no doubt that funding has changed a lot with people. We say, hey, there's a couple of things that we can do here. We can do something via electronic funds transfer. You could do buy now, pay later. You can also be in a position that you can go down the track of doing a credit card payment, to go and make all that happen. If that's a really important thing that agents I've got lots of different financial service providers that can do some of that sort of stuff for them. If they don't have a provider, can you put them in touch with someone who can do it for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we offer that as part of an integrated offering with what we do. So we're actually just about to launch as our winter campaign. We're shooting this in winter 2025, is pay on settlement. So no upfront payments, no repayments, and pay on settlement or 12 months, whichever occurs first. So it's an incredible offer, and it helps to take the pressure off of both the agent who's trying to sell a marketing package to best promote the home, and removing styling as a barrier to entry because we know that they also need the styling, and when you add it all up, sometimes it becomes cost prohibitive for the vendor. So pay on settlement removes all of that and makes it really seamless for the client.
So when you think about that, like a lot of agents are kind of like, oh, it's just a service provider. I'm not like that. I'm really deep in my integration around like loyalty is a really important thing to me, but also too is the foundational idea about like really partnering with someone to actually say, hey, you know what, Geoff, I need a bit of help on this, but hey, by the way, I can give you a little bit extra on that. How important is it for people to actually start to open up and have proper conversations and to build as a partner when you're thinking about what you're doing with your stylist and say, hey, BOWERBIRD, I want you to be a partner for us. And, you know, it just doesn't stop at doing your house. If we're going to do an office refit, or we need to change our reception area, or we're in a position that ultimately we've got some commercial property that we need to do a styling of, can you help with that? This is actually understanding that you go well beyond just doing a residential flat, a residential house. You're actually now in a position you're providing this full service provision. If you need anything for an internal space, you'll help to reimagine that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's something that, we've got to get better at telling that story. So we work across a broad set of client types and a broad set of asset classes. So we're adept at furnishing any space. We work on the property styling that we're talking about, short-term hire. We do long-term hire. We work across build-to-rent fit-outs. We work on developer displays where they permanently furnish penthouses or apartments. We work on furnishing amenity spaces. So we've got a really got a broad offering, and as a result of that, we have a really diverse supply chain that allows us to create incredible outcomes for people for different asset classes with different objectives.
I think this is that whole conversation, like, have the chat. Say, hey, Geoff, I've got this situation. This one's actually going to be a slightly longer campaign at 5 weeks. Can we talk a little bit about what that would cost for the extra week? How can you help me out with this one? Because it's a really special project for us. And you know what? You're actually doing the right thing. And hey, Geoff, that one actually sold in a week or two. So, hey, that's great. No problems. But you learn how to go to work with each other. And I think that that's the really thing about like true partnerships is learning like that you give and take a little bit together and that you really work through that. What's important as a part of that conversation is understanding the power of the people. Tell us a little bit about the stylists, some of their background, some of the training that you put them through and that Lauren puts them through to make sure that they are on trend with fashion, and also too what's, people are saying, hey, that makes me want to live in that house.
Yeah, I don't know. Lauren's probably going to shoot me if I start talking about what's on trend in fashion, but everybody in our business goes through a training process. The consultants that are at the coalface working with the real estate agents directly all have a background in real estate to some degree. So they understand the subject matter, they understand the pressure and the dynamics that occur in selling real estate. So I think that's a really good grounding to be able to have those conversations. And then our stylists are all trained designers, so they've all got degree or diploma qualified, and they understand how to put a scheme together and how to make an impact with that.
So we're going to ask you, what is on trend right now? Like, what are you seeing Lauren is ordering more of in to make sure that we've got available right now?
Mate, that's a question for Lauren, I think.
Mate, I was going to go there with you to see whether or not we could push it a little bit.
We can.
Yeah.
Burgundy's on trend. She's loving that.
Ron Burgundy is
Ron Burgundy, I know, right?
Excellent. Yeah.
Neutrals are always,
yes.
Neutrals are always on trend, but, mid-tone timbers are really on trend. Sort of, the light of the oaks are going out. Nobody likes dark grey anymore. We know that. So,
wow.
So, yeah.
Well, what's the most popular thing that everyone wants definitely in every style? Is it a lounge? Like, is it just that? Is that always a sort of a staple?
It's interesting. Like, there's not actually an always in every property, because every property is different. Like we said earlier, when it comes to an integration, they might not need a sofa.
Yeah, sure.
So, we have a whole data set on that, which I won't bore you or the audiences with, but it's pretty broad, and there's not one single piece that goes into every property.
Mm-hmm. And are you aware about what's happening in a market well before other people are, like about how many people are requesting styling of properties, and so you can get and how many are requesting an extension to the furniture, to give you a bit of an idea about whether or not a market's super healthy or when the quiet or the busy times are in the year?
Definitely, yeah. It's interesting to see that. So we're at the early stages. a lot of what we do is referred from a real estate agent, so and through those relationships. But we also get direct inquiry from the consumers before they've even engaged an agent. So we're seeing that. We see the patterns. There's a bit of a lead indicator in our business in like the number of proposals that are going out, and then there's a conversion metric that says, okay, like is this a hot market where people are inquiring and listing, or is it a market where people are just like testing the market? And then obviously we see how quickly that furniture returns, or if it's to your point, if it's required for extension, and it's seasonal, it's regional, it's often agent specific. So there's a lot of different dynamics that play into that.
And this is a really important foundational idea is that, in working with you, you can provide some really good quality data insights to learn how to work against those trends. And what I mean by that is that, like, after Melbourne Cup, for example, do you get as many styling jobs that would come through as opposed to maybe February? And so, like, literally, if you can realize that, then as an agent, that means in November, prospect like there's no tomorrow, and make sure you get plenty of listings to launch in the first week of Jan. Now, that might mean that literally you have a chat with you to say, oh, mate, how do we feel about putting furniture in a week or two before, Christmas, and then literally starting the job in the first week of Jan? And if you're doing enough work, you might be flexible to help on one or two of those things to assist.
Yeah, again, and that's that partnership that we're talking about. So certainly over that Christmas period, we encourage our agents to work with us leading up to Christmas. Anything they've got coming on in January, we work with them. We get it ready, photographed, ready to go, so that when they come back in January, they can just go live with it and there's no downtime. So we do that all the time.
So in reimagining internal spaces, there's also a bit of outdoor furniture in some of that too. Is this whole idea is that, like, you've done things like display apartments. So that's amazing. So developers, putting a display apartment to try to sell something that's going to be an off-plan type development, so you can go and see that. You've also done amenities inside of developments. So like if they've got like communal areas or shared areas where they need furniture as permanent installs, and also too as temporary installs as a part of that conversation. You've assisted agents with office fit outs. So like, helping them to get all of that organized and also to the furniture that's required for an office. Then you've also done some really interesting stuff about the commercial side of stuff, where you've had people that have had a bit of problems trying to actually get an office leased. So you'll partially or fully furnish sections of that. And then all of a sudden that particular tenant is going to 2 or 3 and they go, oh, we'll just go for the furnished one. And then off the back of that, that's actually led to an incredible business. And so when you start to think about it, what you're really doing is you're discovering creative ways to represent spaces in a different way that allows consumers to say, I want that one. And I'm prepared to pay more for it. And that's that whole idea is about, like, reducing the friction. And sometimes people just can't see what others can see. And that's what you're actually in the business of, is actually creating that visual imagery to make it so appealing that someone actually wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's enhancing the built environment and creating that emotional connection through furnishings. But it's not conceptual. It's all the way through to activating that space. So when we're working with all those different types of client types that you were talking about there, we're not just designing and giving them an idea. We're actually going all the way through procurement, receiving of goods, consolidation of goods, quality control to make sure everything's perfect, all the way through to getting it in a truck, delivering it to site, and then the styling layer that sits over the top of that to make sure that the final presentation is perfect. So it's all vertically integrated into our business. It's all in-house, and we run the whole thing.
One thing that people might not think of, because it's maybe the last thing you think of, but there is risk in some of this sort of stuff, and you need to understand about, there's commercial models, there's also compliance, there's a conversation around insurance. Tell me about some of that, like liability and some of the issues that sit in there. Is it important to understand that, hey, your provider has got the appropriate insurances in play, and what does happen in a case where something does go wrong? A picture gets hung on a wall and the wall falls off, or damages a floor or something. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, and I mean, this is sort of the untold story and the risk that sits in what we do. We're dealing in the physical environment. We've got a lot of moving parts, and we're in and out of a lot of expensive property. So we have a very robust governance structure. Like I said, it's not the sexy stuff, but all our insurances are where they need to be, and we invest a lot of time and energy and dollars in making sure that that's right. And we do that so that we de-risk the client and so that we're secure. And things go wrong. Artworks do fall off walls when,
picture hooks are not in.
Yeah, picture hooks are not in, or it's a super windy day and the front and the back doors are left open for the open home, you know. So those things happen, but we take responsibility for that, and we always just fix it. You know, that's part of working with us. Is so what I can't do as a business owner is say nothing will ever go wrong. What I can do is say when things go wrong, we will solve it. That's the partnership that we work on.
So when you think about it, often the agent might start the initial conversation. Usually the agent's operations person, admin, might be in there. The PA, the EA, who's actually organising it on the day-to-day basis, and particularly at volume. It's important that everyone's involved in having a bit of a conversation on that. It was an amazing opportunity to come and see the facilities, and I've never seen so much pallet racking that goes so high and so long, and I've never seen a guy do so many good tricks on a forklift. But literally, the skills and the abilities are pretty amazing when you start to think about the business at scale. So if an agent wants to come and see that, then I think it's really worthwhile getting a bit of an idea to have a bit of a tour of how serious you are about being exceptional inside of this business and mitigating the risk, but most importantly, being the very best partner to assist them to be able to go to maximize those sale prices. And I think this is a really important foundational conversation. If someone wanted to get into contact and wanted to learn a bit more about BOWERBIRD, what sort of markets do you serve today? Where is the accessibility to get a bit of understanding on that, and how would they reach out to you guys?
Yep. For our short-term property styling business, so typical campaign, we service anywhere from the Southern Highlands up to the Northern Beaches and everything in between. For our broader offering, we're the permanent furnishing, we're doing the entire Eastern Seaboard. So we've got projects in the ACT, we've got projects in Melbourne, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, all across that. So we're working with developers and a whole bunch of different clients in those regions. So in terms of getting in touch with us, jump on our website, bowerbirdinteriors.com.au, our social handles, call me, email me, or get in touch with the team.
Awesome. Well, Geoff, it's been awesome to learn so much more about BOWERBIRD. I look forward to being able to be invited to maybe one of those socializations on the deck there overlooking the whole of the actual facility itself. But you've built an incredible business, and it's amazing to see how seriously you've taken it, but most importantly, to build that technology layer, the people layer, the styling layer, the furniture layer, and then also to think about the different services that you can provide in reimagining those spaces, in furnishing them in beautiful ways. It's awesome to see a business succeed. But more importantly, if you're an agent out there and you're looking for an opportunity to be able to partner with BOWERBIRD, absolutely ring up Geoff, have a bit of a chat with the team, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.